Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam, and I am delighted that you're sharing this Shabbat service with me and with each other. In these very complex times, this is an opportunity for us to step back from our regular routines, to catch our breath, to pause, to reflect. 6 days we speak, tonight we listen. 6 days we build, tonight we rest. 6 days we take care of others. Tonight we nurture ourselves. 6 days we work to change our world. Tonight we are renewed by what is eternal. 6 days we plan for the future. Tonight we are enveloped in the present. 6 days we eat and drink in haste. Tonight we savor the taste of bread and wine and feel the bond of the world that feeds us. 6 days we teach. Tonight we learn. 6 days we hear the clamor. Tonight we listen for clarity. 6 days we struggle to expand our influence. Tonight we are dissolved in a greater influence. 6 days we focus our vision on the task at hand. Tonight we look beyond what we can see. May each of us find our Sabbath peace. Shabbat Shalom. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation in Loveland, Ohio, and of our Jewish community, our online congregation. We've been online for over a decade. We've been streaming services and posting educational materials for people literally around the world. It allowed people who are looking for the voice of Judaism that we give expression to at Congregation Beth Adam, a place that they could come. But now with the pandemic and social distancing, our streaming services have become even more important. Many of our bricks and mortar members are coming to this service as well. So tonight, during this particular service, we will be reading the memorial, the yortzites of our bricks and mortar members. And whether you're a bricks and mortar member or one of our online members associated with our Jewish community, welcome. But it is more than the technology, which is so important. It really is the voice of Judaism that we've been giving expression to here at Congregation Beth Adam for close to 40 years. It's a bold, dynamic Judaism, a Judaism that recognizes that no divine hand is going to rescue us, that the problems that exist today are problems that human beings have created, and we together must find solutions. It's a Judaism that's reflective of our insights, our age, the science and knowledge that our ancestors never could have had, rather than repeating the words that they wrote that reflected their values and their ideas. Here at Congregation Beth Adam and our Jewish community, we have created words that reflect our values and our ideas. So I'm glad you're here. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves as you're watching the service. Be welcoming, be inclusive. Remember to let us know where you're participating from. And I also know that many people watch our services in archives. They aren't available at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That's great. The goal of our online services is to meet you and be with you whenever you're available to participate. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we are able to share this moment together. And we continue our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. On Shabbat, we light the candles. Candles bring forth light, illuminating the darkness. Candles offer us warmth, providing comfort. Candles awaken us as we reach for possibilities. As we light these candles, let their light stretch beyond ourselves, touching others, bettering our world. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. Okay, there we go, finally. I said I've had problems with these matches. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but they work tonight. There we go. So I'm so pleased that Jeff Corney, the executive director of the Cincinnati Nature Center, was able to have a conversation with me about the Nature Center, about nature itself, and about how for many people, walking in nature is a way to cope with and address the feelings and the anxieties of that we're living through during this pandemic. I hope you found the conversation. I hope you find the conversation that we had as interesting as I had talking to Jeff. I'm pleased to be welcoming as our guest Jeff Corney, who is the Executive Director of the Cincinnati Nature Center. Welcome, Jeff. How are you doing?
Hi, well, welcome to, and thanks for having me on your program.
I really appreciate it. You have been with the Cincinnati Nature Center for about a little bit over a year and a half, about?
Not even quite that, just a little over a year, yeah.
So before we really get into the meat of it about nature and the pandemic, could you just talk to us about the Cincinnati Nature Center? Some of us have been there. Some of us actually have performed weddings there. And some I've done some weddings there. And some folks have never been there. Some folks probably have never been to Cincinnati. So could you just tell us about the Nature Center itself?
Yeah, well, it's just a gem of a natural area right here in the greater Cincinnati area. We've got actually two properties here, and I should point out that we're a private nonprofit nature center. Sometimes nature centers get confused as being like a state or a local park, but instead we're that, and we're a little bit more than that, for starters. So we have two properties in this area, and we're on the east side of Cincinnati, located kind of between the city of Milford and Eastgate in Union Township. And the main property, called Row Woods, is about 1,000 acres of beautiful, relatively untouched woodland that's been preserved and protected for over 100 years from the original families that lived here. And we've had it as a nature center for a little over 53 years now. So formed back in the 60s, if you will. Our other property is over in Goshen, a little bit further northeast of here. And that's an 800-acre area, and that is a sort of a reclaimed farmland area, a little more typical Ohio landscape, if you will. Both beautiful, both natural areas. Between the two properties, we have about 20 miles worth of trails, some easy, some even handicap accessible, others a little more distant, a little more challenging, if you will. So we get a lot of folks that come out here to hike, to run, to recreate. We're one of the few places that you're allowed to bring your dog. We are a members organization, so there is a membership fee. And we currently have a little over 14,600 household memberships. That's about 40 to 45,000 individuals that directly affiliate with us at this point.
And when you're a member, you're then allowed to access it. If you're not a member,
yes.
You're not.
If you're not a member, you're still more than welcome to visit. There's an entrance fee. So usually we encourage you to become a member. We're extremely reasonable. A family membership, $86 a year. Extremely reasonable. And yes, you have access to both Row Woods and to what we call the Long Branch property over near Goshen. And we have a number of education and family programs then that you get a discount for as a member.
And the education programs are environmental or nature conservatory. What kind of programs are they?
Yeah, that's what makes us unique is, yes, of course, most of them are sort of nature-based. We are a science-based organization, so we are well-versed in ecology and sciences as we teach about the environment and nature. So our sort of core programs are focused, of course, on that. And we have formal programs for K through 12 and a little more informal for families and adult programs, more specific naturalist type programs, birding and even stargazing. But we also have programs that you might not think of, such as art in nature, nature photography. We even have yoga in nature, and a popular one these days, forest bathing. Which is really kind of coming into vogue these days, especially with the COVID crisis, if you will.
So you can't just leave it like that.
Oh yeah, no, I had to bait that one. Well, this is something it's sort of developed in Japanese culture, but really I think when you describe it, it's kind of innate in all of us, and it's kind of back to that sense of our connection with nature. And the theory behind it is we humans, we have an innate sense of wanting to be in nature. We feel good in nature, and we get relaxed. We get invigorated, and it's not just the physical exercise. It's literally just being in green space, in woodlands. And there's a little science behind it that trees and tree leaves and plants actually are exuding pheromones and chemicals that our body unconsciously picks up on, and it stimulates. It stimulates our serotonin. It gets us relaxed. It's just a pleasant experience. And so the concept of forest bathing is to just be deliberate about getting in nature and relaxing. You don't even need to hike. Just be in green space.
Got it.
And let your mind wander, so to speak.
So when my mind went into taking baths out in a river out there, I went to the wrong place, I guess.
yeah. It's slightly controlled. That's why we sort of guided.
We're in Cincinnati.
No falling asleep on our watch. Yes.
Got it. But that's interesting, and that's in part where I wanted to take our conversation to, given the pandemic, and given that we are all living these much more some intense some way lives because we're sheltering at home, or it's limited the amount of time that we're outside. My Siri somehow responded to forest bathing, I guess. Just popped up there. How do you see people accessing the nature to cope with and to find relaxation in the midst of the pandemic or experience and the intensity of the time period?
That's very much been something. And let me start by sort of winding back to the fateful week or the fateful day in March when, basically our state and our country closed, including us. At that time, if you recall, it was very scary, very ambiguous. And the governmental mandates were shut everything down. But there was an exception, and but we'll see about leaving open spaces open. And we as a nature center, we're not a park, so we were kind of in a gray area. And my management team and I, we decided very quickly, okay, we need to shut down and figure out how to be safe with all of this, because after all, we run like thousands of visitors through our facility per day, especially in the nicer weather. So very hard to maintain that social distancing. So we had to change our protocols a bit, which we did, and reopened about 2 to 3 weeks later. So we opened fairly early in all of this, but it was largely driven because, one, we really need to kind of, as a business, try to figure out how to survive this. But more importantly, immediately our members were, please stay open. This is intense. As you said, this is stressful. I'm bound at home. I can't go to work. I'm not interacting with anyone. I can speak to this too with 3 kids, stuck at home with my kids. Mm-hmm. And there's nowhere to go. So, we felt we need to open. And we have a physician on my board, and we consulted with the health officials in our county. And, they're very cautious, but they said, wow, if you can find a way, please, we'll find a way for you to open, because we cannot underestimate the emotional and mental health of our citizens under this duress. So we did. Our members were grateful. Matter of fact, our membership is higher than it's ever been. Really? We've had like a 60% increase in membership, nearly a 40 to 50% increase in our visitorship during this crisis because of it. And people are telling us, yes, we come here for respite. We've had many healthcare workers who've worked long hours, stressed as can be, come here right after work. No, don't even go straight home, to decompress so they can go home and be a little more normal. So it was a very big deal for us and very important. And we're happy we were able to provide that community service.
So it's interesting. People were doing it before. I mean, but now there's this uptick because people are really looking for something.
There's definitely an uptick. And I think, part of it is just the sheer logistic. I mean, when the mandates came out, let's face it, like the typical recreations were shut off. You can't go to a restaurant. You're not going to sports events, amusement parks shut down. So in some odd way, even though people were coming here, we were one of many choices. Suddenly we were one of the only choices. And I think it allowed people to sort of slow down a little bit, visit us more. People that hadn't visited discovered us and then started coming and visited more. And partly maybe initially because we were the only, game on the block.
Right.
But then because people realized, oh, wow, this is relaxing. And give some thought to that. And my wife and I certainly have, we miss going to the restaurant. We miss going to sporting events. But when you think about it, we go to a recreational event like that to kind of relax, to kind of unwind from a tough workaday world, get our minds to kind of relax. But the reality is going to a sporting event, I love a great football game, but let's face it, it's kind of frenetic.
Right.
or an amusement park or a movie, an action movie. It's not really relaxing. It's more a distraction.
Right.
With no consequence. But our mind is still active. Coming into nature for recreation, on the other hand, I think people are discovering, oh, sure, you can come and run, you can walk, you can be active, but mentally and emotionally, it's immersive and it's truly relaxing. And that's kind of back to the forest bathing idea. There's something more about it that you do not get going to an amusement park or a movie or even to a restaurant that relaxes people, that really allows you to truly unwind and recharge. And I think that's what's bringing people back more and more and more.
And for the folks who've never done this before, who are, I don't know that any of us are sort of never been in nature. We've all sort of, we see it, see. But those people who may never have hiked and done that, what would you say, I hate to say it sounds like a pun, the first step? You can use that in your
the first step.
You can use
Actually,
it in your marketing.
That's a great question because, I say all of this, and of course, my entire career in my life, I've devoted to nature and love nature, and I've been in it quite extensively. So I'm very comfortable in nature. But to that point, there are a number of people that are uncomfortable. Let's face it, we live in a built environment, even in suburbia, let alone inner city. People that quite literally do not have a chance to be in open space, like 1,000 acres of woodland. You're lucky if you get like a half a city block with a few trees, right? That can be very intimidating. And we're very conscious of that. So when we bring school groups, for example, from inner city, we it's like a gentle, kind of is like a first step. And so for folks that are a little more uncomfortable, the other beauty of a nature center is we have a visitor center with amenities. We even have a nature shop. So you can have a little more familiarity and then ease into it. And we have, near that visitor center, we have more developed, even partially paved to well-graveled, level, walking space, wide, not as tree covered. There's gardens, there's nice signage. The parking lot's right there. So we've got about a 3/4 to 1 mile area that's actually mobility impaired accessible, but equally it allows for a nice, easy, I can still see the visitor center. I can still hear people. I'm comfortable being in the outdoors. Maybe I'll try one of the other trails that rings out a little bit. So that's what I'd recommend. Come on in, give it a try. Frankly, most visitors stay within that first half mile of the visitor center as it is and have a terrific experience.
Got it. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about climate change in the midst of all this. Clearly there's an intersection between COVID and the climate and pollution, and we've talked about that a bit with some experts. How have you seen, as somebody who works in nature as your life's work, what are you seeing, and how is it affecting sort of the resources here in greater Cincinnati?
Yeah, actually, climate change is kind of the granddaddy of all environmental issues. Obviously, we monitor many environmental issues. And I've actually spent much of my academic career looking at the issue of climate change. The impacts, from our point of view, as I said, we're a science-based organization. It's unequivocal. Climate change is happening. Frankly, it's always happened. It's just that now it is, in fact, at an accelerated rate. There are, quantifiable changes. And yes, there are impacts on the land that we preserve and protect, because part of the mission of the nature centers, we're preserving and protecting these green spaces amidst an, ex-urban area. And that means into perpetuity, which means we have to pay attention to the long game. What is climate doing to these already somewhat endangered, ecosystems that we're protecting? So we monitor that and are making adjustments accordingly. But we're also educating and saying, there are some changes that we as citizens can make to make for a better future. And if anything, hopefully the visitorship under COVID is kind of getting people to realize, this beautiful natural area right in the middle of an ex-urban area, just east of the big city, 20-minute drive from downtown. It's here because other people a few decades ago had the foresight to say, we shouldn't develop all of this green space. We need to preserve and protect it and make it accessible so that here we are 50 some odd years later, people flocking to us in a crisis, and it's here for them to enjoy and appreciate. I'm hoping that people will realize that and remember that and maybe make good, prudent decisions about our remaining green space moving forward, thinking not just of themselves, but what about my kids? What about my grandkids? What's going to be available for them when they're ready to come in and reconnect with nature, if you will?
And for many of us, we may not have seen native species to Ohio, that we're living in areas that have been redeveloped, and what we're seeing is imports, I suppose you'd say.
Yes.
So when we walk through the nature center, we're actually seeing what Ohio looked like naturally.
For the most part, yeah. And, that's a tricky one because it's hardly any square foot of, in particular, the Midwest, and Ohio is no exception, has been altered to some extent, if not directly, indirectly, because again, we're 1,000 acres, and that sounds like a lot, but from a forest, keeping in mind that at one point, Ohio was 90% wooded. There used to be a saying that a squirrel could cross from the east side of Ohio to the west side and never touch the ground. And almost all of that woodland was removed, so that there's very few remnants of true old growth forest. We happen to have some of it here at the Row Woods, 250-year-old woodlands. But frankly, most of the woodlands that you see and enjoy in any park, and including our own, is mostly second, third generation growth. So right off the bat, it's looks sort of like it, but not exactly. But that's okay, because as long as the ecosystem is functioning, that's fine. But back to climate change, in many ways, we can't really get it back to a historic anyways, because with the change of climate that has already occurred, Ohio on average is actually about 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than it was 100 years ago. It has already shifted, and with it, sort of, I kind of have a saying, where goes the climate, so goes the ecosystem. In other words, the vegetation will necessarily shift based on that change. Ours has subtly shifted already. But again, we're going to work with what we've got, because, nature has a habit of adjusting and adapting, and, with or without us.
Right. And so what do you do to relax? I mean, if you're out walking around, you were talking about stress and all that. Do you still hike every day or when you can? I'm just curious. It's both your job and your relaxation. Right? Yes.
Yeah, actually, it's part of my lifestyle. My family and I, we love to hike, and yes, I find myself here at work all day, and oftentimes in my time off, because my wife and kids love to come to the nature center and hike, and I do too. I call it, sometimes I'll pass staff and I'll take the badge off and say, I'm just a civilian today. But it's kind of fun because it gives me both perspectives, as the director, to see it through the eyes of just a visitor with my kids.
Right.
But yeah, it's the way we relax. We hike. I like to run as well. Which is another great use, by the way, of trails, a relaxing way to run, albeit challenging.
Yes.
So yeah, I wish I got out more than I do. It's kind of ironic. I've spent my whole career outdoors, and somehow I managed to land in a director role, and well, here I am in front of a computer. That's stimulated for us.
But your background is so beautiful.
It is. And by the way, that is a real photo of our Row Woods here. So that is where I would normally hike.
And now we're going to be, so we'll be showing this later in a few weeks, but the seasons are going to change at some point. And I think that's the other thing for a lot of us, getting out and watching how nature unfolds over the course of a year. And the seasonal changes. It must be really pretty when the leaves are changing here.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I'm born and raised in the Midwest, so the change of seasons to me is part of my blood. Yeah, so working at places like nature centers, and this place is spectacular. As I'm looking at the computer, I can look out the window to the real deal out there. It's fantastic to watch the change of colors, and that's one of the beauties of a diverse woodland is we get the full range of colors. It's absolutely spectacular during fall. And all seasons are great. And not only are trails open, but we have activities that are season specific. As a matter of fact, this winter we're going to have a brand new one, a lights in the forest display that we're going to highlight some of our natural areas. Once again, near the visitor center area, put nice lights in some of the trees to sort of accent the woodlands during the colder months, when a lot of people like, now why would I come to a nature center? Well, we'll give you another reason that's kind of fun and a little more familiar and a little more festive, so to speak.
Well, that's wonderful. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really appreciate you encouraging us to get out in nature, because certainly we all need some way to decompress and to take a forest bath. I love that expression. It's going to work its way into a sermon. I haven't figured out how. It's a great, but that image of being in nature and stepping out and gaining some perspective and relaxing a bit. So I appreciate you taking the time and sharing, and I look forward to seeing you some point on a trail somewhere.
Oh yeah, well, you're more than welcome to come on out to the nature center, and I'd love to take you for a hike along one of my favorite paths. So
I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's still beautiful here in Cincinnati, very fall-like. So I would take Jeff's offer. If you can, go to the Cincinnati Nature Center and take a hike. And if you can't go there, get out into nature. It is a way that we can cope and to deal with some of the stress and challenges of social distancing and the pandemic that we are all experiencing. And now we continue our service with our memorial. It is our custom here once a month at our Jewish community to read the names of those deceased loved ones, names that you have sent to me. It's also because of the pandemic that we are now including in this streaming service the yahrzeits of our bricks and mortar members and their families and their deceased loved ones. If you have not sent me a name, or you don't feel like I have the name that you remember and you hold in your heart this night, feel free to include it in the chat right now. It's a way for us to connect with one another, to know that we're not alone. Even though we are separated by distance, we are community, and we rely and lean upon one another. The cycle of life unfolds, just as we rejoice in new life and we mourn its final ending, the inevitable death of those whose lives have touched ours. Today we join voices with others as we say aloud the words which help us to recall those we've lost. We remember the moments we've shared, the laughter and the tears, the beauty and the pain. Inevitably, as our lives intertwined, as we have touched one another, we've been influenced, changed, enriched by their presence. And so, as we mourn their loss, we celebrate their life. Thus, the cycle continues, their lives forever marking the continued unfolding of our own. We pause at this time to reflect upon those who are no longer among us. This moment of remembrance links life to life and generation to generation. And this night we recall those the anniversary of whose death occurs in this month of October. Julius Barr, Dorothy Baum, Mildred Feldman Bayless, Patrick Bell, Walter Astana, B.J. Dennison, Leonard Ducart, Alfred J. Friedlander, Elaine Gartner, Burton Garfinkel, Helene H. Glass, Betty Goldberg, Andrew Mitchell Hoffman, Barry William Jolson, Alfred Hahn Jocelyn, Mary Salzberg Jocelyn, Esther Leah Katz, Esther Kaufman, Harry Joseph Klein, Meyer Lebo, Leo Levin, Alex Levine, Esther Marks, Jeremy Jerry Meyer, Jessica Michelson, Ruth Perry, Jerry Phillips, Martha Phillips, Ross Phillips, Minna Plotnick, Jerry Rao, David Allen Reiner, Joseph Rosen, Lillian Rothman, Rosalind Rosen, Robert L. Ruling, Margaret Sands, Shelley Schumacher, Irvin L. Schwartz, Sheldon S. Schwartz, Marvin Schwartz, Rosa Shane, Allison Jane Smith, Idabel Switsky, George Thiemann, Charles H. Tobias Jr., Ethel Klein Taros Tour, Lawrence Wiseman, Leanne L. Wolfe, Irma Camoz Angrando, Catherine Leach. We recall their memories, and we recall those who've died as a result of violence, death, violence, racism that has caused their deaths. We think too of those who've died as a result of terrorism that mars our planet. We think of those who died defending the principles of justice and peace and democracy here and throughout the world. And we recall all our loved ones who no longer walk among us. Ein b'dei ha'mavet ha'koach la'akor ma shetabun b'lev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. Im dama'ot be'einenu, be'et avleinu, nishmor al zecher achuvenu. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. Let the Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In the serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let the Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope's renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful and a way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength. And we continue our service with our virtual challah and sharing of wine. It's an affirmation that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, a community. In Jewish tradition, we share the challah as we celebrate the Sabbath. We are reminded that challah, a twisted loaf of bread, sustains and nurtures the life of our bodies. May the sharing of the challah sustain and nurture our hunger for knowledge and understanding of the world around us. May the sharing of the challah sustain and nurture our connection to those close by and those separated by distance and time. May the sharing of the challah encourage us to reach out to those across the rooms, those across our hallways, those across our desks, and those across the miles. May the sharing of the challah strengthen and enrich our coming week. Baruch Hamal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Ha'aretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have some juice or some wine, join with me. On Sabbath, on Shabbat, it is our custom to share wine or juice with family, friends, and community. It reminds us that it's not enough for us to quench our physical thirst. We must nourish our spirit as well. As we celebrate Shabbat, may this wine or juice remind us to live our lives to the fullest, embrace the joys and pleasures that life offers. Bruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And so we say, l'chaim, to life. I'm delighted that you shared this Shabbat service with me and with each other. Always go to bethadam.org, and there you'll see our upcoming events. If you're interested in participating in one of our Zoom experiences, that might be an adult education or a conversation that we're doing or a program, you'll need to write our executive director or me, rabbi@bethadam.org, to acquire a link to participate. So I'm delighted you're here, that we could share this Shabbat together. And we close with the words we close with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. And may this Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.